There is no sound more terrifying than the syncopated rhythm of your own mortality, especially when you realize it is being conducted by someone else. I lay in the center of the California king bed that had belonged to my wife and me for 30 years, clutching the silk sheets with hands that trembled from lack of oxygen. My chest heaved, my lungs burned. It felt like a bird was trapped inside my ribcage, fluttering its wings in a desperate, panicked attempt to escape. I am Elias. I am 76 years old. I spent 40 years in windowless rooms, writing the encryption protocols that protect the Federal Reserve and half the banking systems in the Western world. I understand code. I understand security. I understand that the only truly safe system is one that is air-gapped from the world. But my heart was not air-gapped. It was connected. It was regulated by a state-of-the-art pacemaker, the CardioSync 5000, a marvel of medical engineering that was supposed to keep me alive for another decade. Instead, for the last 3 months, it had been trying to kill me. The fluttering stopped abruptly. My heart seized, a long, agonizing pause that made my vision tunnel into blackness. I gasped, arching my back off the mattress. The voice came from the foot of the bed. It was Chloe, my daughter, my only child. I opened my eyes. The room swam into focus. The master bedroom was dim, lit only by the bedside lamp and the glow of a tablet screen. Chloe was standing there, wearing a silk robe, her arms crossed over her chest. She looked worried, or at least she was wearing the face of worry. Next to her stood Greg, my son-in-law. Greg was a man who wore his ambition like a cheap suit, ill-fitting and obvious. He was a failed tech entrepreneur who had burned through 3 startups and half of Chloe's trust fund chasing the next big thing. He was holding the tablet. The blue light illuminated his face, casting deep shadows under his eyes. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at the screen. He swiped his finger across the glass. My heart lurched, a physical, painful kick in the center of my chest that knocked the wind out of me. I groaned, clutching my pajama shirt. "His vitals are unstable, Chloe," Greg said. His voice was calm, too calm. It lacked the frantic edge of a man watching his father-in-law die. "What happened?" Chloe asked, looking at me, then at Greg. Her voice wavered. Was it fear, or was it guilt?
"No," Greg said firmly. "Dr. Aris said hospitalization would just prolong the suffering. He wants to be at home." I hadn't said that. I had never said that. I wanted to live. I wanted to see my garden bloom in the spring. I wanted to finish the memoirs I had started writing. I tried to speak, but my breath was too short. I wheezed. Greg looked at me then. He lowered the tablet slightly. His eyes were cold behind his designer glasses. They were calculating. He looked at me not as a person, but as a variable in an equation he was trying to solve. "Just breathe, Elias," he said softly. He swiped the screen again. My heart raced. Thump-thump-thump-thump-thump. It was beating so fast I thought it would explode. I closed my eyes, riding out the storm in my chest. I had been sick for months. Erratic heart rates, fainting spells that left me bruised and bewildered. The cardiologists were baffled. They ran tests. They adjusted the pacemaker settings. They told me it was stress. They told me it was the natural progression of my condition. I believed them. I was a prisoner in my own bed, too weak to walk to the bathroom without assistance, my mind clouded by the constant hypoxia. I assumed my body was betraying me. I assumed age was finally collecting its dead. I never suspected that the technology inside my chest was a leash. The episode passed. My heart slowed to a sluggish, heavy rhythm. I lay there, sweating, exhausted, listening to Greg whisper to Chloe in the hallway. "Go to sleep, babe," he said. "I'll watch him." "Okay," Chloe whispered. "Call me if..." She left. Greg stayed. He sat in the armchair in the corner, the tablet glowing in his hand. He watched me. He waited. I drifted into a fitful sleep, dreaming of code, dreaming of firewalls that were breached, dreaming of a fortress with the gates left open. I woke to a hand on my shoulder. The room was dark. The clock on the nightstand read 3:15 a.m. It wasn't Greg. I blinked, trying to focus. A face hovered over me, haggard, unshaven, eyes red-rimmed with fatigue.
Dr. Eris, I whispered. Dr. Eris Thorne, my oldest friend, my personal cardiologist, the man who had installed the device. He put a finger to his lips. He looked at the door. He looked at the corner of the room, where the baby monitor sat on the dresser. Greg had installed it for my safety, so they could hear if I called out in the night. Eris leaned in close, his breath smelling of stale coffee.
He bypassed the Do Not Disturb sign Greg had hung on the door. He had let himself in with a spare key I gave him 20 years ago. "I need to check the device," Eris whispered, his voice barely audible. He opened his medical bag. He pulled out a diagnostic laptop, a ruggedized machine with a thick cable. He unbuttoned my pajama shirt. He placed the magnetic reader over the scar on my chest. He connected the cable. He opened the laptop. I watched his face. I saw the confusion, then the shock, then the horror. He typed furiously, his fingers flying across the keys. He frowned deeper. He ran a diagnostic protocol. Then, he stopped. He disconnected the wire. He closed the laptop slowly. He looked at me, and his face was drained of blood. He looked like he had seen a ghost. He leaned down, putting his mouth right next to my ear, shielding his words from the monitor with his hand. "Elias," he whispered. The words didn't make sense. "Hacked. The firmware has been bypassed," Eris continued, his voice trembling with rage. "Someone has root access. They aren't just reading the data. They have write access. Someone is controlling the pacing remotely. They can speed it up. They can slow it down." He gripped my shoulder. "They aren't monitoring you, Elias. They aren't torturing you. Those episodes, the fainting, that wasn't your heart failing." I lay there, the cold metal of the stethoscope against my skin, listening to my friend tell me that my own heart was being used as a weapon against me. I looked at the baby monitor, the blinking red eye of my children's surveillance, and realized they weren't waiting for God to take me. They were playing God. If you've ever trusted someone with your life, only to find out they were holding the remote control to your death, hit that subscribe button, because I wasn't going to let my heart stop. I was going to make sure theirs skipped a beat. "Take it out," I rasped, clutching Eris's arm. "Cut it out." "I can't," Eris whispered. "Not here. Not without a surgical team. And if we move you to the hospital, Greg will know. He'll see the disconnect signal. He might panic." "He's watching," I said. "I know," Eris said. "I can see the connection logs. The IP address is local." We looked at each other. The realization settled between us like a stone. "We need a plan," I said. My mind, usually foggy, snapped into focus. The coder in me woke up. "The data," I whispered. "Can you feed the receiver a loop?"
Make it look like I'm dying. Make it look like the heart is failing naturally. Eris thought for a moment. He opened the laptop again. I can install a ghost protocol, a sandbox. It will accept his commands, acknowledge them, and send back fake telemetry showing the heart responding. But the commands won't actually reach the pacemaker. It will run on its internal default setting. Steady. "Do it," I said. Eris worked for 20 minutes. He typed code. He flashed the firmware. "It's done," he whispered finally. "He'll think he's killing you." "Good," I said. "Now go." Eris packed his bag. He squeezed my hand. "I'll be monitoring from my office." "Not yet," I said. "I need proof." Eris left. The house was silent again. For the next 3 days, I played the part. I lay in bed. I groaned. I clutched my chest when Greg came into the room. I watched him. He would stand at the foot of the bed, tablet in hand. He would tap the screen. He would frown when I didn't convulse immediately, then smile when I let out a moan of pain. He thought he was administering a shock. He thought he was squeezing the life out of me. I saw the satisfaction in his eyes. It was a power trip. He was the master of my rhythm. And Chloe. She came in to bring me soup. She sat by the bed. She held my hand. "It won't be long now, Dad," she said, stroking my hair. "You can let go." I looked at her. I looked for the grief. I saw only anticipation. "We're thinking about remodeling the kitchen," she said to Greg later that afternoon, standing in the doorway while I feigned sleep. "Once the estate settles. Open concept." "We can do whatever you want, babe," Greg said, tapping his tablet. "Just a few more days. The earnings call is Friday." Thursday night. The deadline. The betrayal broke my heart more than the electrical shocks ever did. My daughter. My blood. She was redecorating my house while her husband tried to stop my pulse. On Wednesday morning, Greg took a shower. He left the tablet on the nightstand in the guest room.
I waited until I heard the water running. I got out of bed. I was weak from atrophy, but my heart was steady. Thump, 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 thump. The ghost protocol was working. I crept down the hall. I went into the guest room. The tablet was unlocked. Arrogance. I picked it up. I didn't look at the pacemaker app. I looked at the other tabs. Trading apps, brokerage accounts, and a file labeled Project Icarus. I opened it. It was a spreadsheet. A log. Date, October 12.
Time, 2 p.m. Heart rate target, 180 BPM. Outcome, syncope. Date, Nov 1. Time, 4 a.m. Heart rate target, 40 BPM. Outcome, bradycardia. He was logging the attacks, but next to the medical data was another column. Stock price, Sterling Corp. He was shorting my company's stock. He was betting against the market. Every time he induced a health crisis, the rumors of my failing health caused the stock to dip. He bought on the dip. Then he let me recover. The stock stabilized. He sold. He was using my heart as a pump for his bank account. But the final entry chilled me to the bone. Date, Nov 14th, Thursday. Target, flatline. Outcome, death. November 15th was the quarterly earnings report. If the CEO died the night before, the stock would crash. It would plummet. And Greg had put options, massive put options. He was betting everything on the crash. He wasn't just killing me. He was monetizing my murder. He was turning my death into a windfall. I pulled a USB drive from my pajama pocket, one I had retrieved from my study the night before. I plugged it into the tablet. I copied the files, the logs, the trading history, the pacemaker control app data. The shower turned off. I yanked the drive. I wiped the screen with my sleeve. I placed the tablet back exactly as I found it. I crept back to my room. I climbed into bed. I pulled the covers up to my chin. My heart was beating strong, steady, 70 beats per minute. The trap was set. I was ready to die, but on my own terms. There is a specific temperature to a room where a murder is about to happen. It is cold, sterile, and vibrates with the static of unspoken intent, stripping the humidity from the air until your throat feels like sandpaper. I sat propped up against the headboard of my deathbed, a pile of goose-down pillows supporting a spine that I was forcing to curve in weakness. The makeup Dr. Aris had smuggled in yesterday, a theatrical grease paint used for stage productions, felt heavy and cakey on my skin. It highlighted the hollows of my cheeks and cast a sickly gray pallor over my complexion. To anyone looking at me, I was a corpse that just hadn't stopped breathing yet. Across the room, standing by the bay window with his back to the night, was Greg. He was silhouetted against the dark glass, a shadow holding a tablet. He was tapping his foot. Tap, tap. A frantic rhythm that betrayed his calm facade. He wasn't grieving. He was buffering. He was waiting for the download to complete.
Chloe sat in the armchair next to the bed. She was wearing black. It was premature, a subconscious slip, or perhaps she just wanted to be ready for the coroner. She held a tissue in her hand, twisting it into a tight white rope, strangling the paper fibers. Her eyes were red, but not from tears. They were red from the strain of waiting for the other shoe to drop. And sitting uncomfortably on the edge of the ottoman was Mr. Sterling, the family attorney. He was a good man, a man who had drafted my original will 20 years ago. He looked between me and my children, sensing the rot in the room, but unable to name it. He kept adjusting his tie, pulling at the knot as if the air in the room was too thin to breathe. "We really should do this, Dad," Chloe said, her voice trembling. She reached out and patted my hand. Her touch was clammy. "The doctor said, he said the next episode could be the last. If you slip into a coma without assigning the voting rights, the board will freeze the assets. The stock will plummet." "The legacy," I whispered. My voice was a rasp, a dry rattle that I projected from the top of my throat. "Of course, sir," Greg said from the window. He didn't turn around. "The quarterly earnings call is tomorrow morning. If the market smells weakness, they'll short us into oblivion. We need a unified front." Mr. Sterling cleared his throat. "Elias, these documents, they are significant. They transfer immediate, irrevocable voting power of your majority shares to Gregory and Chloe. Effectively, you are stepping down as CEO and chairman tonight." I looked at Sterling. I wanted to wink. I wanted to tell him that I was the only lucid person in the room, but I maintained the charade. I let my head loll to the side, my eyes fluttering shut for a moment before dragging them open again. I just want to rest," I groaned. "Exactly," Chloe said, jumping on the weakness. She shoved the clipboard toward me. "Just sign it, Dad. It relieves you of the burden. You need to rest. You've worked hard enough." "The burden," I repeated. I looked at Greg. He had turned around now. The blue light of the tablet illuminated his face. He was looking at me with a mixture of contempt and impatience. He tapped the screen. I knew what he was doing. He was checking the telemetry. He was looking at my heart rate, checking the battery life of the pacemaker he thought he owned. "I'm not tired," I whispered. The volume of my voice changed.
I dropped the rasp. I engaged my diaphragm. The words came out clear, deep, and resonant. Chloe froze. Her hand stopped twisting the tissue. Greg frowned. He looked down at his tablet. He swiped a finger across the screen, a sharp, violent motion from left to right. I knew that command. That was the induce arrhythmia protocol. That was the kill switch. He was trying to send a 50-joule shock directly into my ventricle to simulate a massive cardiac event. He was trying to silence me before I could change my mind. He swiped again, harder. I didn't flinch. I didn't gasp. I sat there, staring at him. I reached under my pillow. My hand closed around the cold, brushed aluminum box I had built in my garage workshop 20 years ago, a relic from my days contracting for the NSA. Dr. Eris had updated the frequency modulators, but the chassis was all mine. I pulled it out. It was a signal jammer, a localized high-frequency disruptor designed to create a digital black hole within a 20-foot radius. I flipped the toggle switch. A tiny green LED blinked to life. Greg swiped the screen a third time. He was frantic now. He tapped the glass, shaking the device. I asked. The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush the furniture. Greg looked up. His face was a mask of confusion that was rapidly dissolving into terror. "What?" I asked. "If you were having trouble connecting to the network," I said. I reached down to my left arm. I ripped the tape, holding the IV line in place. It stung, a sharp, grounding pain. I pulled the needle out. A single drop of blood welled up, bright red against my gray makeup. I ignored it. I swung my legs over the side of the bed. I stood up. Chloe gasped, scrambling backward, knocking the clipboard to the floor. You shouldn't be moving." "My heart is fine, Chloe," I said, standing to my full height. "It's beating at a steady 72 beats per minute, because the device inside my chest isn't listening to your husband anymore." "I don't understand," Sterling said, standing up, his lawyer's instincts sensing a shift in the universe. "They aren't here to sign a will, Arthur," I told my lawyer. I walked toward Greg. He backed up until he hit the window. He held the tablet like a shield. "You hacked my monitor," I said. "You bypassed the firmware. You've been torturing me for months, Greg. Every fainting spell, every palpitation. That wasn't nature."
"You're crazy," Greg stammered, sweat breaking out on his forehead. "He's delirious, Chloe. He's having a psychotic break." "And you shouldn't be betting against your father's life," I said, ignoring him. I nodded to the bedroom door. It burst open. Dr. Eris walked in first. He looked tired but triumphant. Behind him were two men in windbreakers with FBI cybercrimes emblazoned in yellow on the back. They weren't the local beat cops. These were the men I used to teach. These were the men who hunted ghosts in the machine. Greg dropped the tablet. It hit the hardwood floor with a sickening crunch, the glass spiderwebbing.
"The put options! They expire tomorrow!" "You were ruined a long time ago," I said. A female agent pulled Chloe up from the floor. She was sobbing, makeup running down her face, the black dress now looking like a costume for a play that had been canceled. She screamed, "Dad, help me!" I watched them. I watched the handcuffs click shut. I watched the realization settled in their eyes. Not remorse. Never remorse. Just the shock of the predator becoming the prey. As they dragged Greg past me, he stopped struggling for a second. He looked at me with hate-filled eyes. "It was just business, Elias," he spat. "It was just math." I leaned in close. I let him see the grease paint on my face, the artifice I had used to catch him.
It wasn't business, Greg, I whispered. They dragged him out. The door slammed. The shouting faded down the hallway. The room fell quiet. Dr. Harris walked over to me. He put a hand on my shoulder. I took a deep breath. My lungs filled completely. There was no flutter. No pain. Just the steady, reliable beat of a heart that was mine again. "I'm tired, Eris," I said. Mr. Sterling was still standing by the ottoman, looking shell-shocked. "Elias, the will, the company." I walked to the window. I looked out at the driveway. I saw the red and blue lights of the federal vehicles flashing against the trees. I saw my daughter being placed in the back of a car. I felt a pang of grief, sharp and deep. But it was followed by a wave of relief so profound it almost knocked me over. I was safe. The leak was plugged. The system was secure. I turned back to Sterling. "Call my broker," I said. Sterling blinked. "Now." "Wake him up," I said. I looked at the shattered tablet on the floor. I looked at the Project Icarus file in my mind. Greg had bet against me. He had bet that I would die and the stock would tank. Tell him to liquefy the emergency reserves. All of it. Sterling asked. I smiled. It was a cold smile, but it was genuine. "Buy the dip," I said. "When the news breaks tomorrow that the CEO survived an assassination attempt by his own family, the stock is going to be volatile. But I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to buy back every share Greg shorted." I walked to the bathroom. I turned on the tap. I began to scrub the gray makeup from my face. The color returned to my cheeks. The eyes staring back at me were bright. "Sterling Corp is about to have a new CEO," I called out over the running water.
Me. I dried my face. I walked back into the bedroom. I was alone. The ghosts were gone. I lay back down on the bed, not to die, but to rest. I closed my eyes. Thump, thump. I was alive, and I was in control.